speaker, Dr. Rica Joy Flor from IRRI, who's going to be talking about exploring sustainable options for fall armyworm management in Cambodia. Rica, can you join us?
Yes. Alison, do you hear me?
Yes, I do, loud and clear. Okay. So you can start. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alison, and good afternoon, everybody. We are indeed, this presentation is about a case of just exploring coming from a country where biocontrol is not very common in Cambodia. And next slide, please. And you can skip this one, yes. So let me preface this presentation with the why question. Coming from IRRI, rice background, why is this relevant to us? In Cambodia, we are currently doing a project together with the IPM Innovation Lab and many government partners looking at ecologically based pest management, which is developing a package that can harness insights from the ecology and behavior of different pests and thereby helping farmers to reduce their reliance on pesticides. And with this project, we wanted to support innovations, particularly bringing out these alternatives to pesticides, sustainable ways to manage pests, especially biological control, which is very limited in Cambodia at present. And we are also looking into sustainable management of pest outbreaks. And so this presentation is exploring fall armyworm management with our partners, but as such, it is not classical biocontrol. Yeah, so next slide, please. When fall armyworm was expected to arrive in Southeast Asia, one of the initial activities that we did was to look into surveillance and looking at whether the pest is already present and what are the natural enemies that potentially may be existing. And after collection of some fall armyworm eggs, the General Directorate of Agriculture tried to culture these eggs and look at whether there are parasitoids that would emerge out of this. And they found some Telenomus species from this one. But we know that this is only the first step. Next slide, please. We are interested, and next, yes. We are interested in what are the currently available options in Cambodia. There are, at the moment, not many options for commercial biological control that the farmers can easily access with. And we know that farmers would often resort to pesticides. Next one. So we tried an experiment where we looked at first, what if the farmers did nothing as one treatment control. Also, we surveyed corn growers in an area that has seen some incidents of fall armyworm damage. And we asked the farmers, what is their current practice for managing the pest? And the most common one was just applying insecticides, specifically emamectin benzoate, and making it a double application in one season. So this was the most common. But we also looked at what does the pesticide seller, what do these companies, also from the literature that's being brought out to the farmers, what is being recommended out there? And the recommendation was to alternate pesticide. It's still majorly pesticide. It's chlorantraniliprole, and then followed by emamectin, and again, a third application of chlorantraniliprole. So we looked at then, in terms of commercial biocontrol that is available in Cambodia, perhaps we can test one, and that is Beauveria bassiana, is also available in Cambodia, mostly imported from India. And we had a treatment that is applying Beauveria 3 times in the season. Next slide, please. From this experiment, we found that biological control has high infestation compared with the pesticide options, but also a bit lower compared with doing nothing. And we also found, in terms of yield, one more please. Yes. In terms of yield, we found that the biocontrol application using Beauveria had a little bit higher yield than the 3 other treatments. So we are seeing that maybe it has potential, but we also wanted to see whether this results can be replicated. So we tested it again, and next slide, please. And the question this time was, oh, one more thing. We also looked at, of course, the farmers would be interested in looking at biological control if they can access it, and also whether it makes sense from an economic perspective to the farmers. And when we looked at production costs, biological control is expensive because it's not very common in Cambodia, mostly sold in the capital. It's not the normal pesticide that you can find from a village seller. So that makes the economics of it a little bit not so competitive to the pesticide options. But if you examine the net profit, it might be better than using 3 applications of pesticides per season. Next slide. We wanted to then test this again, but this time also examine whether a reduced number of biocontrol applications, thereby reducing cost, would be more effective. So we added, one more please, Allison. We added 1 treatment, which is biocontrol using, again, still Beauveria bassiana, but this time application 2 times per season. And next slide, please. This is still freshly harvested. We have not yet collected or summarized the yield data, but we are seeing similar trend in damage scores. And in terms of comparing it again, pesticides, much lower, doing nothing, much higher. But we're also seeing there's a bit of difference between whether you apply 2 times Beauveria bassiana or 3 times of the biocontrol, 3 applications per season in terms of the damage score over time. So what we're seeing is perhaps if Beauveria bassiana were to be used, it would have to be adjusted in terms of perhaps tweaking the applications, or maybe we will need to explore other types of biological control, and that's where we are at the moment. Next slide, please. We wanted to also survey other natural enemies, other parasitoids, perhaps predators that exist in the corn areas, also maybe other entomopathogenic fungi, and then try to test the effectiveness of these collected natural enemies. At the moment, the General Directorate of Agriculture is still continuing the mass rearing of Telenomus, and we're going to explore whether we can do a mass release of this fall armyworm parasitoid and examine the efficacy of this mass release. So that said, next slide, please. These are the different partners that are working on this with us, and my colleague, Ms. Liberty Almazan, is also here, and we would be happy to answer your questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rica. That was a very interesting presentation, and it was nice. We've had 2 sort of focus presentations on classical biocontrol, and it was nice to sort of end with that almost an introduction to biocontrol of the process that you've gone through to sort of start thinking about what could be the approaches that could be used in Cambodia. So that was a very nice way to end. I know there's going to be lots of questions coming up on your presentation. So Liberty, have you joined us on the speaker? If you could unmute yourself, because I think you might want to answer questions as well.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
Welcome. So Liberty is going to join Rica for this Q&A session, and I'm just going to bring up the question and answers for myself. So sorry, the questions, so I can see them. And here they are now. Okay, so we've got lots coming in. Firstly, I've got a lot of questions about farmers and how do we get farmers to think about biocontrol? How do we get them to consider using it? I guess it's you're actually the perfect people to sort of answer that question from your social science perspective. What are your thoughts on that, Rica?
Thank you so much. I think that there has to be several prongs with which we help the farmers to access or to be aware of biological control. The first one is on the policy side, where indeed we've been talking about regulation for classical biocontrol, but there's also regulation in terms of selling and trading biological control, which is very important in countries where they're still starting at a baseline. The products are not yet there. To help the market to develop these products and to make them available to farmers in a cheaper way, that sort of regulatory policy context has to be ready. We're also looking at, of course, the state of knowledge. To what extent is your extension system supporting these options, and how much knowledge is available or being brought out to the farmers in a way that farmers can access it? Lastly, also accessibility at the local level of these options. We're seeing, for example, in Cambodia, kind of competition where the farmers are easily able to access pesticide, easily able to access the recommendations from pesticide sellers, easily able to see that pesticide is the most convenient or maybe the better option for them. So then that really leaves out your biocontrol technologies on the side. So if perhaps you have several prongs of strategies that need to be addressed, and all these together help the farmers to access and be able to use it and see that it has benefits.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's a great answer. And
Yeah,
I think,
can I add to that also?
yes, please.
I think it's very important to create awareness in farmers that there are other options other than the pesticides, other than the insecticides. Okay, if we can let farmers know these are other options that would give us benefit in terms of non-target organisms, in terms of the health of the environment and the safety of the ones or humans using it, then I think farmers will be enlightened and try these other options.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Now, I've got some specific questions here around why did you only use bassiana? Did you try any other isolate to know the efficacy? Thank you, is the question from one of our participants.
Okay, thanks for that. We used Beauveria bassiana because it was the only commercially available option in Cambodia that we know. If the research would show that this is a good option for farmers, we can immediately recommend it at a national level that this exists and you can buy it. So that's where we started with Beauveria bassiana.
Well, that sounds like that's a good place to start, given that it seems it's the only available option. So you didn't have too many options to choose from. But here's some more questions following that up. What particular stage of the plant did you apply the bassiana?
So the Beauveria bassiana was timed in three spaces. So the first one was 2 weeks after planting, and then every 2 weeks thereafter. So it wasn't so much, and I had a discussion with Dr. Buyung Hali, and he mentioned that perhaps one way to maybe see better if Beauveria would work is to adjust the timing, not so much timed in this stage, but perhaps to look at the cycle of the Fall Armyworm and target it better.
Excellent, thank you. When here's another question. When spraying of pesticides is keeping the fall armyworm levels lower, why do you think the yields are lower? Did you check?
I think For that one of the things that we discussed was perhaps although the damage on the leaf or on the plant, looking at control, looking at biocontrol option, those treatments, perhaps the damage on the plant was there, but the yield, the plant itself was able to recover from this. Because we do not see, also during that time, we did not see other problems on the corn itself compared to this season. For example, we saw fall smut, we saw stem borers. So, but for that previous season, we did not. So we think that perhaps during that season, the corn was able to recover more.
Okay, excellent. Okay, another question here. We've got some very specific questions. It's generated a lot of interest. What dose of Beauveria bassiana did you use in the experiment? There we go. We're really getting down to the specifics here.
Dose of Beauveria bassiana.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think we used 250 grams per. If we convert it, it would be 250 grams per hectare per application. Because we only then used, and in the end, it was more like 750 grams per hectare.
Okay, great. And if you want to add to that, I think you'll be able to see in the Q&A questions, you might be able to provide some further feedback, but there's obviously a lot of interest, Rica, on this. I've got a question here which is a little bit different. Have you surveyed whether there's any fall armyworm infestation on rice?
Yes, we are very keen to hear about this. I must say we did not do a field survey as such. We are also depending on our partners in the provinces who are aware of fall armyworm on corn, but there has been no report that there's any infestation or damage of fall armyworm on rice so far in our 4 provinces where we work. So hopefully it stays that way.
Yes, let's hope so. Here's a question from Cyril Tura. Is it possible to combine botanicals to control fall armyworm with parasitoids? Perhaps you can have a go at answering that, Rica or Liberty?
Maybe Liberty? Would Liberty have better?
I think you can combine because botanicals are from natural sources. So I think it would work hand in hand with the biological control agents.
Okay, thank you very much. Here's another question for for either of you. What rating scale did you use for the fall armyworm infestation scoring?
Yes, we follow the FAO scale, the one in the biocontrol guidelines of FAO.
Excellent. Okay, how can we? Oh, here's a question here. Other than plant damage, sorry, I'm trying to read the questions and ask them at the same time. Did you collect the insect cadavers to confirm the infection by the Beauveria bassiana?
You mean the cadavers of the fall armyworm?
Yes.
No, we did not collect this.
Okay. The next one was here, do the farmers accept this method in Cambodia? I think you alluded to this a little bit in your presentation. You definitely talked about the farmer uptake, but maybe a little bit more insight into how easy is it for farmers to actually apply or use this method?
We have tried in our other experiments for rice. We have tried working with farmers using Beauveria bassiana for rice. In some cases, particularly in areas where they were used to spraying insecticide and then they realized that, oh, there are safe alternatives and I don't have to spray it so much, and now I'm seeing the yields are okay. After 2 seasons, the farmers were quite happy with this. Part of the biggest disincentive was just the cost and the accessibility of Beauveria.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, thank you. And one more question here, and I think we'll then go into our panel session. But I have here a question from Srinivas. What was the trigger for spraying or applying treatments, or is it calendar-based?
It is calendar-based. Yeah, and perhaps that is also something that we might need to reflect on moving forward, whether there might be other triggers that are better. But because, for example, for the pesticide treatment, we surveyed it from the farmers or from the pesticide sellers, and they were also calendar-based in that sense.
Oh, that's very interesting. Actually, I just have one more question I'm going to squeeze into your session. Here's the last question on the Q&As coming through. Do you have a sense on rice or maize farmers' perception on biopesticides in Cambodia? Do they find it safer or more efficacious?
My sense is at the very beginning, there's a lot of skepticism for things that are not being sprayed. But spraying in general as a skill, as a practice, is quite accepted. So if it's biopesticides, that spraying, there might be a bit of openness for it. But then when it comes then to looking at pesticide safety, there is a lot of farmers that really say, oh, we would like other options that are not pesticides. But again, they would then encounter cost issues, they would encounter issues about accessibility, credit from the pesticide sellers. These things the farmers balance among these decision points.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you.